Everybody, it is Thorn. Happy Saturday. I wanted to talk this week about expertise. And so one of kind of the central concerns, I think, of a lot of folks, regardless of their tradition, is where proficiency is located, where expertise lives. How do you know if and when you become an advanced practitioner? How do you know when you're ready to take next steps? How do you know when you're ready to teach? How do you evaluate somebody who's put themselves in that teaching position? And I think a lot of these kinds of concerns, just generally, I think it's very natural, are rooted in insecurity about the authenticity and effectiveness of what it is that we are personally doing. One of the ways that we affirm for ourselves that we are doing witchcraft right, whatever that means, is when other people are willing to listen to us. If our platform grows, if we become some kind of social media person, if we can get a book deal, if somebody wants us to speak at their event, if we can get people to join our coven, like when people defer to us, that's one of the measures that we collectively as a whole use to indicate, oh, I've made it. I must be doing witchcraft right. And I hope that the problems with that are obvious. But I thought maybe I would just kind of chat a little bit about some of those things, and I've made myself a little list here of kind of points I want to make, just because, I mean, this is kind of at the fore of my brain because, first of all, I'm really interested just generally in authenticity in religion. Like, how do we decide when somebody is a real practitioner of a thing? And particularly being a witch, I think because so many of us are engaged in the reconstruction of practices, whether we're trying to reconstruct something from days of yore or whether we are trying to locate, real Wicca or real authentic traditional witchcraft or whatever the thing is, that's something that I think is a real source of anxiety, not just for like insecure people, but I think kind of for all of us. I think it's what drives many of us to consume as much as we do in terms of what we read, in terms of the events that we attend, in terms of who we follow, who we interact with online. I think that central question of, am I doing witchcraft right? Even if we don't voice it, and even if we feel confident a lot of the times, I think that central anxiety is really at the fore for really all of us. And what I want to say in relation to that, I mean, if you've watched me for any length of time, I mean, it's a very rare video that I've removed from this channel, so you can go back like 10 plus years and you can see how I've grown, how I've learned, how I've changed my mind about things. Same with the blogs. Like, I've been around since LiveJournal. Like, 30 seconds on Google will pull up an awful lot of shit about me. And you can tell how I've changed. And I leave all of that stuff there for a reason. It's not that I'm super proud of stuff I was writing, in like 2007, right? It's just that having all of those pieces kind of fit together, like the anthropologist in me likes having kind of this continuum that's available for people, even if it's embarrassing to me sometimes. But given that I've been around for so long, I've definitely had moments where I'm just like, oh, like I feel like I've mastered this thing, or I'm definitely an advanced practitioner. I'm an expert at this thing. It's acceptable for me to accept money to teach X thing, or, whether that's giving tarot readings or teaching about witchcraft at an event or whatever. Like, at some point you hit a place where it's like other people are affirming expertise for you, so it becomes okay to do things like think that whatever I have to say is worth publishing in a book, right? Like, the amount of ego that you have to have in order to think that, like, you are uniquely qualified to have a big YouTube platform or write a book for a larger occult publisher or whatever, like, and I'm not saying that that's bad, but like, there is just essentially an ego involved in doing those things. Like, that's just true. So thinking about that, expertise is a moving target. And I think that that's the thing that we miss in these conversations. Like that cliche about big fish in small ponds, I think is very apt here. Witchcraft is a small pond, and traditions within witchcraft are even smaller ponds, right? Like Gardnerian Wicca is a tiny pond. Traditional witchcraft is a tiny pond, right? And everything like breaks down further when you're looking at like regions or the network that I have, maybe like pagan events, right? Even across like the United States, like these are all tiny ponds. And if you're only hanging out in tiny ponds, it very quickly, like it's very easy to become a big fish pretty quickly. If you're only reading books that are available like when you walk into Barnes and Noble, if you're limited to what's on the shelf, eventually you're going to read them all and you're going to assume that you're an expert, right? Who wouldn't? If you didn't have access to, let's say, Amazon or another bookshop, a specialty bookshop, right? If you didn't know about some of these specialty presses, if you didn't have access to the internet, if you only had what was available at Barnes and Noble on the New Age shelf and you read it all, like you could easily assume that you were an expert and just be done with it, right? Like that's what I mean when I talk about a small pond. And eventually, right, you're not limited to that thing. And you realize that there are other ponds out there and bigger ponds, right? Your pond connects to other ponds. So your expertise shifts. If I am, really prominent on like one social media platform and I'm friends with everybody who makes videos or whatever makes posts on that social media platform and we have each other, like whether we like it or not, we sort of create kind of a little bit of an echo chamber. Like that's our pond. We affirm each other, we recommend each other. And for people who only have access to that pond, we become the experts, right? And eventually, like you stay long enough, you become an expert as well. But I think the key to actually advancing as a practitioner and actually learning is recognizing that you're in a small pond and seeking out other ponds. And if you are practicing in an environment where you are the expert, I think that it is your obligation to seek out spaces where that is no longer true. I don't think of myself as an expert witch. I think that sometimes that's not to say that I haven't felt that way in the past, okay? And I think a lot of people, when they feel like they're experts, a lot of the times that comes with a feeling of like exasperation, like I'm not being challenged, like, oh God, like every book is the same book, like I'm sick of reading the same shit, I'm sick of like, not being challenged. Like I think when people think of themselves as experts, a lot of the times it's indication that they're actually bored. So something to think about. But like expertise is not an objective thing out in the world that you achieve and then you're done with it. And I think that if that's where you are failing. Like that is when that you know that you have stopped growing. So I just sort of challenge folks to think bigger. Like the fact that I have written books doesn't mean that I'm better at witchcraft than other people. It means that maybe I'm better at writing than people who don't write books. The fact that I have been on YouTube for a long time and have accrued a bit of a following here, again, like which is really tiny compared to some folks. But that's not an indication that my opinions are worth more than other people or that I know more. It's that something about this particular medium has lent itself to my personality or whatever. And I think that's true for all of us. Like, we'll have stuff that we're good at. Like, you could be an impossibly gifted medium or tarot reader or writer or like whatever the thing is, but you could be totally out of your depth on some other aspect of the craft. And I think that's what's so wonderful about it. So I really think we should just kind of collectively like disabuse ourselves of this idea that people are either like beginners or they're advanced. They're experts or they're novices. And like you hit a certain point you're an elder, you're an expert, you're a teacher, whatever. And then there's nothing else to learn. And I don't think we do that consciously. Like, I think we sit down and we realize that you never stop learning, but we act like we don't understand that. So that's what's on my brain. I actually have like 4 other points here, but I don't want to have like a super long video for you here. But just some thoughts. Like, expertise, I think it's illusory. And I think we all just need to seek out bigger ponds and get comfortable with what we don't know. Have a great weekend, everybody.